Milim could erase the swarm with one Drago Nova. Frey knows that is exactly the kind of opening Zeranus wants. So the battlefield begins with restraint instead of annihilation. AI Anime and Manga presents. If you want more slime chapters like this, like, comment, and subscribe. YouTube members get upcoming episodes early and help cover the narration, subtitles, thumbnails, and rendering that keep the project moving. On the horizon, 12 insect armies are already moving, and Milim's side has to choose who fights first. Milim's team was watching the horizon.
Wow, that ain't good.
Carillon was the first to speak, while the blood drained from everyone else's faces. The land and the sky were filled with a swarm of insects. Their sheer ferocity was impossible to measure, their threat impossible to imagine. Obela was the first to answer him. Those are 8 out of the 12 armies of Zeranus, the Insect Lord. This couldn't be much worse. His inner circle, the 12 insect masters, all coming together. The convalescing Obela had undergone a full recovery thanks to the care Milim provided. She was determined all over again to fight, and even the score with Michael, the man who destroyed her beloved army. But even she was at a loss for words in the face of this abominable swarm coming their way. She just had a thing against bugs, really. Otherwise, she never would have pleaded with Zerario to give her the far more dangerous role of watching over the World Destroyer dragon. But regardless of that backstory, this was one reality they could no longer afford to run away from. Milim turned to Frey.
Frey, is it alright if I blow them all away with Drago Nova?
Well,
Frey thought about it for a moment. It wasn't a bad idea. Obela was giving Milim the most expectant look too, so Frey was willing to permit this. If Frey was an insectophobe as well, she probably would have said yes without a second thought. But she stopped herself. She had no particular reason to say no, but she also had something of a bad feeling about this.
using our most powerful attack first thing might have its tactical purposes, I suppose. But it's not a good idea to reveal our hand before we even know what the enemy's capable of.
So, despite the evasive way she phrased it, Frey dismissed Milim's idea. With such a huge number of enemies, it was certainly tempting to have Milim wipe them all out in one go. But for now at least, she thought it wiser not to underestimate the insectors. She knew Zegian, after all. She herself actually fought against Apito the Insect Queen, but she was there to watch Carillon face off against him. Apito, whom Frey just barely beat, was an exemplary magic born as it stood, but Zegian was on another dimension. And now they were fighting an enemy from the same species as them.
I know I might just be worrying too much about this, but I think it'd be better not to write these guys off as pushovers yet.
No one laughed at Frey for being a wimp. In fact, Carillon agreed.
Yeah, I think Frey's got a point. You really can't discount your instincts like that, so I think we better be cautious too. I don't think Milim's not up to the task or anything, but let's start with a standard frontal attack first.
Middray, Milim's erstwhile servant, saw fit to comment as well. Their sheer numbers are a problem, but individually I'd put them on the upper end of a B grade. If we crush their commanders, who are presumably an A, it'd just be an unruly mob at that point. Their strength is pretty clear visually, so it'd be easy to find the right targets. It might be a surprisingly easy victory. He was speaking based on his own standards, which made him a little unprepared to play battle strategist, to say the least. It did not even sound like a strategy to Frey, but she kept silent, recalling that the people under Middray were probably used to his reckless streak.
All right, we'll take care of the flying ones. Could you handle the ground insects, Sir Middray?
Frey wanted to wrap this up quick before any more dumb ideas got tossed around. Carillon tried to help her a little.
I don't want to leave them to Middray alone. I'll have my warriors take out their commanders too. Once we decapitate them like that, they'll be pretty good training for our new army.
Middray answered with a wry grin. Yes, that would be appreciated. Not for me to bring this up, but I'm a tad unsure it's wholly right for priests to be fighting on the front line. I wouldn't be just a tad unsure about it, thought Obela. But she also saw fit not to bring it up. Instead, Obela offered, I'll guard Lady Milim.
Yes, I'll expect great things from my big four here.
As usual, Milim was enjoying this immensely. This conversation seemed so relaxed, like everything was normal and they were not about to go to war. Carillon blinked.
Huh? Big Four? Are you serious?
Milim, I think Rimuru is too much of an influence on you. Can't you give them more normal military posts instead of calling them the Big Four?
No. I like Big Four, okay? I've always thought it was so unfair that he gets to have a Big Four and I don't.
Well, fine by me, but...
Middray agreed with Carillon. And me. Whatever Lady Milim deems fit to do, I will gladly follow. Obela joined in as well. I'm happy with it too. That, and I'm glad she's so accepting of me.
Great, so now I'm the bad guy for saying no to her? Fine then, do what you like.
It was almost predictable how this debate would work out. So Milim's forces were out on the field, waiting for this otherworldly enemy to arrive. By this point, this was one of the largest, most powerful armies the Octagram and the world had ever known. It was composed of what used to be 3 different Demon Lord domains forces. Carrera and Frey had both evolved into the Million class too, which required a reorganization of their forces. The role of general was given to Carrera, who now had command over the entire army. Frey was named Chief of the Guard, assigned to oversee the forces under Milim's direct control. Middray as High Priest and his warrior priests were charged with handling logistical support. Obela, the new recruit, became their chief strategist in charge of operational planning. This was the Big Four that Milim was so newly proud of. Among the military forces they controlled, the first to bring up were the Flying Beastly Knights, the main part of Carillon's army. Sufia was their leader, with Phobio as vice chief. They led an army that consisted of the remnants of Clayman's force and the Beast Kingdom's warriors, with former members of the Beast Masters Warrior Alliance serving as the officer class. There were 100 different corps in this force, which numbered 100,000 in itself. Add Caroline's command to that, and here was an army that truly knew no fear. The next force to introduce was the Milim Guard, an ultra-elite team directly overseen by Frey. Lucia and Claire were her aides-de-camp, providing her with any needed support. This was an aerial knight force led by Frey's treasured Griffin Corps, over 3,000 knights in all. The Heaven Flyers, Frey's personal force, served as team leaders overseeing groups of 10 to 30 fighters. Griffins, as magical beasts, merited a B+ rank, but under Carillon's training, the Griffins of this force had been improved up to an A- grade, being ridden by elite warriors from across the Beast Kingdom, not to mention the Sky Queen's personal guard, allowed each of them to easily drop the minus from their rank. What's more, the Heaven Flyers had been affected by Frey's awakening, so their individual strength was also equivalent to the top of the A class. Some were even comparable to a special A warrior, making them a force to be reckoned with. As of right now, this was the largest military force in the world composed strictly of A-graded troops. Although they numbered only a bit over 3,000, they were all fierce warriors that could fight aerial battles with machine-like teamwork and precision. The last force instituted with this new reorganization was their hastily assembled rear support guard. Middray was their leader on paper, but it was actually Hermes taking command. It was mainly composed of magic-born stragglers, human mercenaries, and bits and pieces of Clayman's force, a motley crew now united under Middray and providing battle support. Most of them were primarily involved with construction work up to this point, their individual strengths ranging from D to B at best. They did not have any disposition for fighting, so their duties included transporting supplies, procuring food, and helping out the priest force as medics. There were a lot of them though, at least 100,000. Put all of this together, and Milim was overseeing a 200,000-strong force, the combat teams in front, and all the many support crews in the back. To this was added the reinforcements from Tempest, and Geld's army, comprised of the yellow and orange numbers, was among the most conspicuous of them. They had been summoned here to help construct Milim's home city, but now they were plunging right into a defensive role. Between yellow and orange, they totaled around 35,000 troops, although some were reassigned to support other corps as well. This force specialized in defense, but the yellow numbers among them were particularly impressive. After Geld's evolution, the high orcs under his command experienced a dramatic increase in fighting ability. The numbers also broke 10,000 soldiers by this point, some of them worthy of an A rank, so the overall average for the yellows was now at A-. The orange numbers were a seasoned army by now as well, having gained valuable experience in previous battles. They averaged a B rank, making them as strong as any Knight Corps out there, and when combined with Geld skills, they provided an ironclad defense for their allies. However, their role in this war was strictly protecting the rear. They would not see action on the front lines. Team Hiryu, led by Gabil, should not be forgotten either. It was still a force of just 100, but all of them were special A in rank, which was frankly unheard of. This team was given free rein to fight any way they wanted, flexibly adjusting and repositioning themselves as the need demanded. Finally, there was Carrera and Esprit, just a pair of demons, but still fearsome. These reinforcements would join Milim's army to face off against Zeranus, the Insect Lord. But despite all their power, they still pictured a tough fight ahead. After all, they were outnumbered by at least 10 times a 3 million-strong insect force, flying and wriggling their way toward them. That was how things stood before the fight began. Carrera was the first to move. "If Milim's not taking action, I guess I will instead," Carrera said. She marched to the front, giddy with excitement.
I really wanted to show off what I could do, but Frey was against it, so whatever. I'll let you take this one, Carrera.
Milim was not about to stop her. They had, over time, become best friends. The synergy between them caused even more collateral damage than what either one could do alone, but neither of them cared. As long as they were having fun, all was well, and there was no denying how much better they fought as a team. It was all about power with them, because power means strength, and strength means destructive force. Carrera shouted across the battlefield, "Get ready to be wiped out, you stupid bugs! My ultimate, most powerful Abyss Annihilation!" Unleashing her most powerful magic from the get-go was a classic Carrera move. It, alone, eliminated over 2 million insects. The over 10-fold difference in army size was now reduced to around 4-fold. All the soldiers who had been wailing over the hopeless gap in strength were looking a lot more hopeful now. At first glance, Carrera's actions might have seemed absurd, but there was certainly no better way to cheer people up and boost their morale. Culling the enemy before they could even cause any casualties boosted her allies' will to fight without expending any of their own war power. One would think this gave them a huge advantage in this battle, but Frey's premonition was about to come true.
No way, he channeled her magic into the other world.
Esprit's answer came tight with disbelief. Lady Carrera's magic? I can't believe it, but it looks to be true. This is exactly why I hate insectoids. Some of them cancel out magic too. They're like natural enemies to us. Esprit was right. The magic from Carrera had been diverted by a single insectoid, a female one, with long, slender wings that shone every color of the rainbow. Her name was Period, one of the 12 insect masters and a fighter who was absolutely superior when it came to magic. Carrera stopped admiring the trick and gave her order. "Well, no time to act all impressed. It's coming soon. Geld, build a barrier directly above us with everything you got."
Right.
Carrera's smile disappeared as she gave the order. Geld had his doubts about it, but still obeyed without further question. As they spoke to each other, Esprit next to them sprang into action. Using her unique skill Observer, she deployed her own defensive magic to help reinforce Geld's defensive wall.
What is...
Before Frey could finish the thought, a strange distortion opened up in the sky. Carrera nodded. Just as I anticipated. Esprit praised her from beside the wall. "Well done, Lady Carrera. You deciphered that complex magic rewrite immediately, didn't you?" Carrera answered like it was nothing. "Of course, this is basic stuff. But can you hold out?"
I'll join in too then. If they destroy this castle, Frey's gonna be so mad.
Milim also put her hands up high. With that, their force now had a 3-layered defense system: Esprit's magic, Geld's wall, and Milim's protective curtain. Not a moment later, a wave of destruction poured down from that rift in the sky. It was the exact same Abyss Annihilation that Carrera had unleashed a moment earlier.
Whoa, is that the...
What's going on here?
Frey was sharp enough to spot it right off. Carillion's instincts also told him what happened at once. Middray muttered a moment later, "Aha, So they channeled Lady Carrera's magic into the other world, then connected it to an exit point right above our heads. What an insane thing to see. That was the answer. The only leader still clueless about what was going on was Gabil, but there was not much to be done about that. As gifted in magic as Carrera was, she just had her most powerful offensive strike bounced right back in her face. It was nearly impossible to explain to someone like Gabil, and even harder to imagine. In fact, no one here had any idea this kind of thing was even possible. At any rate, they had no choice but to have Geld and crew defend as best they could. Everyone awaited the impact with bated breath. Then, for a few moments, there was an intense flashing light, followed by an impact that felt like the world had turned upside down. It subsided as rapidly as it came, eventually quieting down to nothing. Once the shaking had subsided, Carrera finally spoke up. Funny to think they could do that, huh? If that was Milim's magic, I'm not too sure what would have happened. Only after they somehow blocked her own abyss annihilation did Carrera breathe a sigh of relief. She was acting all casual about it now, but the people around her gasped in horror at the idea. The power of that strike had been reduced to less than a third of normal, which allowed everyone to somehow withstand it. But the terrain around the castle had been all but stripped bare, the roads and other landmarks barely recognizable now. Rebuilding all of this was a headache-inducing idea, but there were no casualties at least. What if that blast just now was a Drago Nova, though?
People can't meddle with my magic that much, you know? I bet she only would have been able to bounce a small chunk of it back at us.
Carrera was being honest. Even a small chunk would have been impossible to weather, though, maybe. How to put it? We don't even know how that spell works yet. I don't think we could defend against it too well, not unless we could change the laws of nature. She might be something of a magic whiz, but Milim's spells were on another level. And given how they were always competing to see who was more powerful, Carrera knew just how dangerous that could be.
In that case, the enemy wouldn't have been able to throw Milim's magic back at us, would they?
That was a good point. Gabil's perceptiveness made him seem pretty smart now and again.
No, they could. That enemy had an immaculate command over dominate space. She must have pretty good coordinate calculation skills. I bet she could change the path of any kind of directional magic, no matter the type, huh?
Carrera agreed. I think you're right. And I hate to say it, but the bigger and more complicated the spell, the easier it is for her to manipulate, I assume. And even if it was a spell that activates on a set point like nuclear flame, she could probably cut off the space around it to cancel it out. If a magic spell featured no delay in activation time, the enemy might not have enough time to deflect it. But spells like that would not be able to deal a fatal blow to these guys. Demons specialized in reading their foes' magic and tossing their own against it, and now Carrera felt like that approach had been stolen from her. And more to the point, the presence of such an exceptional mage on the enemy's side was troubling in itself. Obela lowered her head. I apologize. If I was more familiar with insectors, I would have stopped you before you could launch that. Nobody here was about to chide her for that, though.
Well, it's behind us now.
Exactly, and if you just look at the results, look at how many enemies we cut down with 0 damage to us.
True, we're safe after all, so no reason to complain about this. What we need to do now is consider our next step.
Both Milim and Frey were correct. Carrera's blow did greatly reduce the enemy's strength, and their soldiers, unaware of what just happened, were still riding high morale-wise. It would be a better use of time to stop playing the blame game and try to keep this momentum going.
Okay, no magic from now on.
No objections here. We'll just attack them up front the old-fashioned way.
Middray added his own idea. That would be fun, I bet. I don't see the enemy's king here, but I'm looking at about 8 commanders, perhaps. The same number as us, coincidentally. Why don't we each try to take down one of them? It was a kindergartner's approach, but Carrera was into it. That does sound like fun, actually. Okay, how about I take that arrogant-looking bastard over there? She was looking right at Zeth, seated on the back of a flying insector. He was the chief insectoid general of this army, and the presence he projected proclaimed as much to the world.
No fair. In that case, I'll take...
No, Milim, you're our leader, so you need to stay above it all.
Right. If we get in trouble, we need you to jump in and help us, okay?
Alright.
After stopping Milim just in time, Frey surveyed the battlefield before her.
So, along those lines, I'll take that flying bug over there.
Her eyes had settled on Torun, the flying drone beetle. With Carrera and Frey setting an example, the rest of the team hurried to catch up.
Okay, I'll take...
I will go for...
Middray began at the same time. As for myself, Carillon, Gabil, and Middray all spoke up at once. They looked at each other.
First come, first served. Then...
Middray accepted the challenge. Very well. I haven't had a chance to go all out in far too long.
Indeed, it's quite true for me as well. Now time to settle the score.
There was no time to stop them. In a flash, the three leaders shot out from the castle, attempting to get a leg up on their rivals. Their armies, inspired by the sight, moved to catch up with them, and so the curtain was raised on this great battle. With a nod to Milim, Geld stepped away to command his own force. All that remained were Milim, Obela, and Esprit. Obela asked Esprit, "You're not going?" Esprit reluctantly began. "Well, to be honest, I'm not up to their level at all, so I think it'd be safer to watch how things unfold and provide support to someone else's battle. If I bite off more than I can chew and blow it, it'd be a drag on our whole force, so..." It was a wise decision. For once, this was not just her trying to dodge responsibility. Obela thought it over. Fair point. Underestimating the insectoid commanders would be a bad idea. I don't have much actual fighting experience either, but I can tell that you don't want to let your guard down around them. Many of Obela's friends, after all, had been killed by insectors. Zeth, the target Carrera picked, was said to be a challenge even for Zerario. Even Obela was not sure she could take him on and win. So the three remaining leaders decided to wait and see how things shook out. The first to meet their enemy was Carrera. Carrera gave the rabble a single command: move. Slashing her way through the rabble of soldiers, she zoomed across the battlefield. In a flash, she reached Zeth, calmly poised in front of her, and fired her golden gun at him. Zeth easily avoided it. Even a supersonic bullet at point-blank range was just a warm-up for him. Carrera sounded impressed. Not bad. In a quick motion, she transformed the golden gun into a military sword, its blade a shining shade of gold. Carrera introduced herself. "I'm Carrera, the one who will take your life." Zeth answered from where he sat. "Ridiculous. You can talk such nonsense only after you make me stand up from here." The battle began. Frey leaped out at the same time as Carrera, the Heaven Flyers escorting her without waiting for an explicit order. The Milim Guard followed suit as well, of course. They were not focused exclusively on guarding Milim now, in order to allow for fluid role changes as needed during battle. Besides, Milim did not need bodyguards anyway. Obela was still with her, so Frey could concentrate on going all out without any worries. So, kicking away the flying bugs that tried to accost her, Frey confronted Torun, an insectoid commander who was protected by an exoskeleton with a metallic sheen to it. He was stocky, not exactly aerodynamic, but surprisingly large from up close like this, nearly 7 feet long. There was no denying his power, though. Making full use of his 2 pairs of dragonfly-like wings, he buzzed through the air with remarkable nimbleness. He dodged the first strike Frey attempted, and she knew then and there that Torun would not be going down easily. She then tried a high-speed talon slash. Torun flitted away, easily avoiding it. These were 2 fighters with 2 different methods of flight, and in the air, Torun had an advantage. Torun's compound eyes were able to capture Frey's movements like she was going in slow motion. He was not as fast of a straight-line flyer as Frey, but he could easily predict where she would go, which made evasion a snap. He did not possess any special skills, his strength instead relying on his thick exoskeleton, prediction skills, and flight speed, a simple but effective package. His fists also contained a special substance called Elionium, the strength of which surpassed even adamantite and went into the god class level. Between reaction speed, defense, and offense, the core elements of any battle, Torun lagged behind Frey in existence points, but outclassed her in combat ability. Frey was planning to use her momentum to wipe up this enemy in quick order, but this strategy suddenly seemed like a major miscalculation. Or it should have been. But then Torun just had to open his mouth. Torun jeered, "You slow, me fast."
Huh?
That was enough to make Frey lose her temper. As Milim would say later, there was nothing mild-mannered about Frey's personality at all. Anyone who says something stupid about her would learn how dumb a move that was real quick, and Milim should know considering how much Frey yells at her. Now it was Torun's turn to learn that with his own body. Gabil had followed Frey, his team Hiryu in tow.
All of you! Our enemies are insectoids much like Sir Zegion or Lady Apito. I'm sure you realize how strong they are, but do not let your guards down.
His loud warning was met with broad nods from his crew. They were always getting beaten to a pulp down in the labyrinth. That made the danger here crystal clear, so they were all on perhaps excessively high alert. So Gabil pressed on, using his breath to cleanse the sky of the clouds of bugs surrounding him. Kakushin, Sekiro, and Yashichi, his erstwhile yes-men, followed close behind. Yashichi called after him. "Ah, hey! Hey, Sir Gabil! Are you going to help Lady Frey?"
I am ready to, yes, if she is having trouble, but...
Yashichi's suggestion did not fill Gabil with enthusiasm. Frey might not appreciate the attention, he thought. Besides, someone else was occupying his own. Sukero had just noticed it too. "Oh, Sir Gabil, I see someone tough looking over there." Kakushin was now taking the words out of Gabil's mouth. "Indeed, he resembles Lady Apito somewhat, but I sense something far more sinister about him. Yes, even Gabil thought this guy was more of a threat than Apito. The Insect Queen's EP was below his own, but they were an even match in a fight. His record against her was not that great. It was always a slog whenever they clashed. This guy, though, portended even more disaster for him than Apito. His instincts told him the whole story. This is bad." This insectoid was Beethop, a cross between a bee and a grasshopper. And Gabil had absolutely no idea what to do about him. He had to think about both himself and the lives of Team Hiryu. Rimuru always ordered him to not even think about dying, so he could not take on a fight when he did not know the odds of survival. He could often get carried away and be driven to a frenzy by Carillon and Midray's bloodthirsty ways, but he was not that much of a combat enthusiast. He did want to test his skills as a warrior, but risking his life in a fight was not on the menu for him. Gabil thought about Sokka. And besides, if I were to get seriously hurt, Sokka could very well stop talking to me for good. I made her cry last time, and I know full well how hard it was to get her in a good mood again after that. The bitter memory almost moved Gabil to tears. Every battle pairing came with its own set of compatibilities, and he saw no need to give up the advantage of flight here. He did not have to go out of his way to challenge a dangerous opponent. He could just find one easier to beat. With that thought in mind, Gabil tried looking for another enemy commander, but it was not going to work out that way. Beethop closed the distance and shouted, "Yo, don't run on me." In an instant, the fearsome commander had crossed the long gap between them.
What?
Gabil reacted to Beethop's subsequent kick because he was used to Apito's speed by now. That, plus the upgraded God-class performance of his Vortex Spear, made it possible to withstand that strike. Beethop, like Torun, had his limbs covered in an allionium exoskeleton, along with the vital parts of his head and torso. His slender body let him fly faster than even Torun. He had that beetle's defense, plus even more of an offensive punch, an almost cheat-level set of abilities. A simple EP comparison put him above Gabil. Frey was one thing, but this was probably too much for Gabil to handle. Now that it had come to this, though, there was no escape. Gabil steeled himself. The only way to survive was to fight and win.
Aha! A worthy opponent! My name is Gabil, the one deemed the Draco Lord by Sir Rimuru.
With that introduction, he turned to face Beethop. Carillon was sprinting. Behind him was an insectoid with spider-like legs on his back. The insectoid gave his name. "My name is Abalt. I will kill you."
Yeah, right. You talk big for someone so weak.
They were engaged in battle while running at full speed. Carillon's divinity-derived strength was no joke. If this was a one-on-one fight with no consequences to think of later, he would have unleashed a burst roar to knock off a bolt long ago. He had not because he was on a battlefield. With other insectoid commanders potentially watching him, he could not carelessly break out his most powerful secret moves. Besides, unlike in the labyrinth, if you die, it is over. Survival is everything in a fight, so he needed to figure out an approach that conserved energy and did not require excessive effort. If this was truly a formidable opponent, Carillon would have flung himself into battle without worrying about the future. But his instincts told him that victory was beyond doubt here. Abalt's existence points were less than half of his. Like the other insectoid commanders, his skill set was geared for combat, but so was Carillon's. In this match, he had a clear advantage. Middray's opponent was Cyril, whose body glistened with a toxic liquid. His reddish-purple glossy exoskeleton was, needless to say, infused with allionium, and a deadly poison oozed from his tail that would kill anyone with a single touch. He was a scorpion literally dripping with poison, and for hand-to-hand fighters he would be pretty difficult to handle. But not so with Middray. Middray muttered, this is trouble. Cyril laughed. You're one unlucky fool standing in front of me. Middray corrected him. Unlucky? I think you might be misreading this, so let me inform you. In battle, luck is never a factor. Cyril stared at him. Huh? Middray continued. Yes, you may occasionally encounter a lucky punch, or someone beating a far superior opponent, but such apparent miracles are the results of honest effort, occurring only because you've polished just the right sorts of weapons for that superior fighter. If you simply chalk that up to luck, it hardly makes all that effort seem worth it now, does it? Cyril demanded. What are you trying to say? Middray put it more briefly. Well, let me put it more briefly for you. You see, am strong. And as soon as he said that, Middray disappeared. Or not. Using instant move, he closed the distance in a flash, faster than Cyril could follow. The scorpion went flying as Middray smashed his fist into his face. Middray inspected his hand. That hurt a little, but I can get used to it. Purple smoke was wafting up from his fist as he spoke. This was Cyril's poison. Thanks to battle will, Middray's whole body was covered by a protective curtain. This poison was strong enough to eat through even that, but Middray did not care. Cyril stammered, Who the hell are you? My poison did nothing on you. Middray shouted back, Call it having the right attitude. If I couldn't do this much, I'd never survive a day as Lady Milim's playmate. Regardless of how sound this logic was, Middray's shout was unnerving Cyril. This man certainly did not look strong. It confused him immensely. Cyril's thoughts raced. This is crazy. There's no way anyone could punch my exoskeleton and emerge from it unscathed. What's going on with him? Despite that concern, Cyril still thought his victory was inevitable. He was an insectoid commander, and this was just some wimpy human. But that was naive thinking. Middray may have looked like a human, but deep down he was a true dragon mute, just like Gabil. And although he used battle will to hide his full abilities, his existence points were actually twice as high as Gabil's. Now facing Cyril, Middray was truly in his element. Geld, back to the front line, bellowed at his men.
Our mission is to keep even one enemy from breaking through.
All his fighters shouted back at him, Yay! There was no fear on any of their faces as they coldly watched the advancing enemy. Their opponents took many forms. They were monsters that seemed to boast traits from a variety of insects. Few of them were humanoid, but strangely, the closer they were to human form, the stronger they seemed to be. Then Geld's gaze fell on a single point, a figure sitting on the back of a centipede that must have been 100 feet long. The overwhelming presence he projected made it easy to infer that he was one of the insectoid commanders.
I'll take him on.
Geld muttered the words, and several of his aides nodded back. Good luck, sir. He took a step forward, buoyed by his supporters behind him. Esprit had her sword in her hand as she headed toward the window.
Are you going?
Esprit made it sound as casual as going out for a walk. Yeah. Lady Carrera appears to be struggling, so I thought I'd provide what assistance I can. From their observation point here, it looked like Zeth, Carrera's opponent, was a terrifying force. Period was also blocking her magic, further putting her on the defensive. Esprit no longer felt she could stand idly by and watch just because she was too weak. It was time to take out the sword she had hidden up to now, a legend-class blade forged by Kurobe. After years assuming that all non-magic weapons were useless to demons, Esprit had secretly begun honing her swordsmanship. Carrera, her boss, had grown addicted to it as a hobby, and as her servant, she felt obliged to master it as well. More than that, though, fighting with Agera piqued her interest. She felt it seemed attractive to have a demon specialized in sword fighting, so she began to secretly develop a magic sword for herself. This blade was not quite ready for actual combat yet, she thought, but now was not the time for quibbling. Period's clampdown on magic was working outstandingly well, too well for Esprit to counter. It was humiliating, but that was the truth. So instead of magic, why not just take the world on with a magic sword instead? Esprit smiled at Milim, and, well, I don't think the enemy's too picky about keeping this a one-on-one fight, so it'd be silly not to join in. So yeah, see you later.
Right! Do your best!
Then she set out, Milim seeing her off. Now only Milim and Obela remained in this sky-high keep Frey was so proud of. Obela said, "Well, Lady Milim, it's time for me to join them out there."
Oh, you're okay health-wise?
Obela answered politely, "I'm sorry to cause you so much worry along those lines. I'm already completely healed though, so please don't concern yourself about it."
You're a stubborn one, huh?
Obela chuckled at Milim's exasperated reaction. "It's in my nature, I suppose, and I think you've already noticed, but..."
Yes, you're the one behind this kind of viscous aura across the battlefield, aren't you?
Obela nodded, her face tightening. "Yes, Zeranus the Insect Lord is an incredibly powerful foe. I'm not sure I would be able to handle him, so I would advise you to please be careful." It would be best, she thought, if Milim never had to wade into battle. But if Zeranus made a move, there would be no way to stop him otherwise. She might not like it, but they would all have to count on Milim then. That was why Obela hoped they could eliminate as many enemy commanders as possible first. And just now, she caught sight of a single free commander, Tishorn, an insectoid with mantis-like blades for arms. Her plan was to defeat him, then keep the momentum going as she helped someone else. This was a race against time. They had to take out as many commanders as possible before Zeranus acted, but they knew too little about the enemy's powers. It was going to be far from easy.
I'm thinking there are at least a few real dangerous ones out there, Obela. Do your best to ensure everyone gets back here safe, okay?
Obela answered with all her heart. "Yes, my lady." Obela experienced a rush of elation. It just felt so good to receive orders from her master. She fought her previous battles out of a sense of duty, but now Obela could feel strength welling up from the bottom of her heart. A thought passed through Obela's heart. Oh, is this how it felt for all my troops too? I wish I could have rewarded them more for it. She grew sentimental for a moment, but only for a moment. Obela was alive because she took on the wishes of her beloved army. And now, she could no longer stand still. Obela promised Milim, "I'll be back."
Right! Put up some results for me!
With Milim's final words of encouragement, Obela was also off to fight. And so the war began to intensify.
Route confirmed. The next episode and full playlist are ready.
Then don't stop here. Keep watching in story order and subscribe before the next part drops.